There was history, and tonight there was History Friday night as well. But I think more importantly, the American people are facing a very critical decision on November 4th. And tonight we saw that decision really painted in very stark contrast. Joe Biden flawlessly demonstrated his substantive knowledge, his expertise, his judgment, his readiness to lead with Barack Obama, our nation. And he made the very strong case that Sarah Palin and John McCain represent one choice, and that he and Barack Obama represent a very different choice, a choice to make a fundamental change from the failed policies of the Bush-Cheney years, whether we're talking about health care, tax policy, providing for working class families education and the needs of the middle class, or whether it's a fundamental change in our relationship and our standing with the rest of the world, ending the war in Iraq, focusing our effort and attention on al-Qaeda and the Taliban, which are resurgent in Afghanistan and Pakistan, who have grown in strength while we've been distracted in Iraq. Barack Obama and Joe Biden represent fundamental change. And we heard from Sarah Palin tonight very clearly that she and John McCain will continue and in many instances intensify the failed economic policies of George Bush and the failed foreign policies of Dick Cheney.
Much has been made, Susan, of Sarah Palin being an outsider, being a Washington outsider, and much has been made of Senator Joe Biden being in Washington for more than 30 years.
Indeed. John McCain and Joe Biden have known each other a long time in the halls of Washington. Sarah Palin is new on the national scene. Barack Obama represents fundamental change of the sort that we have not seen ever in this country. So we have two interesting tickets, and they're both full of character and personality, as we saw on display tonight. But really the issue that the American people are focused on in a time of crisis, of economic crisis, and of national security crises, is who is going to lead us in a fundamentally different direction, who is going to bring credible, meaningful change. And we've seen some very erratic and angry pronouncements out of John McCain over the course of the last 2 or 3 weeks, veering dramatically from declaring the fundamentals of the economy strong to saying we're on the verge of the Great Depression, and all the while offering no policy prescriptions. And then we saw Sarah Palin tonight ask for her Iraq plan, and John McCain's Iraq plan, and being absolutely unable to deliver it, and unable to explicate the contours of his health care plan. So we have vagueness and rhetoric and indeed attacks, as we heard out of Sarah Palin tonight repeatedly, but no affirmative agenda, no vision for how we bring jobs, how we bring health care, how we bring better education to the working people of this country who have suffered so much under the policies of George Bush and Dick Cheney.
Susan, jobs, health care issues so critical to the middle class, and much has been made on the Democratic ticket that Joe Biden understands middle class values because he comes from the middle class. But since he's been in the Senate, it's certainly been a more privileged life. So how can he really connect and really understand what those in the middle class are going through?
Well, Joe Biden has one home, not 7. Joe Biden bought his home for $350,000, and it's thankfully appreciated in value, maybe not so much in the last little while. He raised 2 young sons as a single father after he lost his wife and child in a car accident. He comes from the hard-scrabble streets of Scranton, Pennsylvania. He knows where he came from, and he's never forgotten where he came from. And Barack Obama, let's remember, came from very humble background as well. He was raised by a single mother who at one point had to even go on food stamps in order to be able to provide for her family. They both understand the realities that working Americans are facing because they have lived it themselves. They are 2 of the Senate's most consistent and strong supporters of working people. And Joe Biden remains, despite the fact that, as he acknowledged tonight, he's done fine as a United States Senator. He remains the second or first least wealthy member of the United States Senate. But to be honest with you, Melissa, I think those facts are less relevant than the policies that these men and women would pursue. The question is, are you going to give tax breaks to the wealthiest Americans, $4 billion in additional tax breaks to the oil companies? Are you going to leave out of your plan, as John McCain does, 100 million Americans, whereas Barack Obama will provide tax relief and tax reductions for 95% of working families?